Hello, this is Book a Day, and today I'm going to be talking about Critical Failures 2 Fail Harder Caverns and Creatures Book 2 by Robert Bevan. So, our group of misfits have finally resolved their problems with the law and have traveled to the nearby city. They are trying to loosely fit in, but mostly finding a place to recoup after a couple of different inns that had some problems with either their race or just their personality as a whole. We find our heroes in a tavern trying to get drunk and figuring out what they're going to do next, which they promptly get kicked out of. Meanwhile, Catherine is getting chatted up by some guy at the bar, and Chaz passes out. The bartender, a minotaur, had kicked them out because Cooper had Julian use some magic. Unfortunately, the bartender does not allow any form of magic. Cooper just wanted Julian to make his beer cold. After the bartender kicked them out and actually admitted that the cold beer was a good beverage, he did give them a little bit of help and pointed them into the direction of another bar that would fit them better, called the Whore's Head Inn. After a bit of miscellaneously getting themselves lost, they find the Whore's Head Inn and find out that it's actually a tavern of players from Earth that Mordred had sent there himself. Now, a quick recap from Book 1. Mordred is now locked in the freezer at Tim's Chicken Shack, freezing to death. Cooper, trying to take the role of a hero anytime he can, immediately admits to them that they had captured and killed Mordred, which is not as well received as they would have hoped. The other players that Mordred had captured in the game as well admits to him that there are more powerful creatures out there that Mordred has been maintaining and keeping away from them because he is the Cavern Master. But they do come to a conclusion that there is a possibility that they might be able to find their way out now without Mordred intervening. So they get themselves established with this group and start learning of how they can make a living, because they're going to need a good chunk of gold to be able to find someone who can teleport them or do anything to get them back to their homeworld. Meanwhile, Catherine isn't exactly the smartest person, and because of this, she's getting chatted up a bar in a fantasy world with someone she has no idea who he is. Now, in her defense, we find out that this person was using a glamour. After a bit of flirting and a few beers, the gentleman at the bar, that we now know as Miller, has invited Catherine and Chaz, who's asleep at the bar as well, to join him for the evening. But she's not allowed to take with her Butterbean, her animal companion. Now, normally in the game, she would have a big problem with this because Butterbean is an animal companion, and the rules of the game have a very strong influence on your personality and how you handle certain things. He takes them to the top of a mountain where they are now hosted by Miller. Meanwhile, after they had been kicked out of the first bar, Tim had made sure to tell the barman that there was a girl that they were with and to send her to the Whore's Head Inn to find Tim and the group. The Minotaur has a dwarven woman who Dave had been talking to come over to the Whore's Head Inn, and then they start getting nervous and anxious and run off to go find out what happened to Catherine. They have one of the players come with them, Tony the Elf. Frank, who is a gnome player, has taken a bit of a leadership role in the group of Mordred victims. As they go run off to figure out what happened to Catherine, they run into a couple of other player characters that are not a part of Frank's group. They are known as the Four Horsemen, a couple of middle schoolers that have been added to the game by Mordred, not because they had irritated him, but because they thought he was the best thing since sliced bread, and stroked his ego in such the right way that he gave this to them as a gift. Because of which, they are a bit unstable. They are openly talking about raping the dwarven girl that is with them and taking advantage of Tim as well because he looks like a girl. Tony the elf explains that these kids were a part of the group originally, but because the way that Mordred appreciated their attention, he actually provided easier campaigns for them versus the other players and has allowed them to power level more versus the other players aren't as open to running off and possibly getting themselves killed. They get to the bar to find out that the Minotaur actually did this on purpose and isn't going to tell them why. Apparently, he has influences with Miller. So, Tim, who has more or less been taking the lead since the story started, goes back to the Horsehead Inn, tells Frank what happens, and then Frank sets up a group to help them find information on what might have happened to his sister. Jumping over to Catherine's story, Catherine and Chaz are now the guests of the vampire Mordred, and all the things that are involved with that. A fun continuation from the first book. I find it very entertaining, very funny. I haven't laughed this much in a while. I would definitely give this book a 4.5 out of 5. It's interesting, it's fun, it's creative in its development, and there's just so much that can go wrong. It's just a fun read. A lot of the story is focused around Tim taking the lead and slowly losing his mind. There are plenty of offhanded jokes, of course, and Cooper is about as disgusting, if not more, than the first book. So I wouldn't exactly say that this is a book directed to a younger generation. I would say it's going to be good for the new adult fiction genre. It still holds up as a lit RPG. There's a lot of general game mechanics that they do kind of focus on. For an example, one of the characters had to run around with a wolf outfit on and try to get hit by arrows so they can salvage them for money. Based on a roll of the dice is depending on whether or not they get hit or not. They don't really roll any dice for this, but it's something that they reference to a lot. Alrighty, this has been Book a Day, and I hope you have a good day. Bye-bye.